Seeds of Defiance. The Galactic Dominion called it sector pacification. Humanity called it occupation. From the viewport of the stealth cruiser Resolute, Captain Alara Vance watched the cold glint of a Dominion supply convoy slide across the void. Each vessel was the size of a city, loaded with munitions, fuel, and food for the occupying fleets. To most, the sight would be demoralizing, an untouchable show of power. To Alara, it was an opportunity. Cloak status, she asked without looking away. Full phase, Captain, replied Lieutenant Harrow. They can't see us unless they are inside our hull. Good. The Dominion wasn't expecting a fight in this backwater. That was the point. They believed humans lacked the numbers and technology to threaten them directly. They were right, sort of. Humanity didn't need to match them ship for ship. They needed to think smarter. Alara had spent months studying Dominion logistics, and she'd found a weakness: their reliance on fixed hyperlane relays. Destroy the relays, and fleets were stranded, unable to coordinate. It was a simple problem of overconfidence. The Dominion believed no one could get close enough to touch them. Target the relay beacon on the lead freighter, she ordered. Make it look like a systems failure. Harrow's fingers danced over the console. The Resolute's particle lance whispered through space. No flash, no blaze, just a ripple of distorted light. The relay beacon shattered. Moments later, Dominion chatter filled the intercept channels, confusion mounting. Convoy Alpha to Control, experiencing nav failure. Request vector correction. Control never answered. Alara's other strike teams had already silenced the sector's relay hubs. By the time Dominion repair crews could arrive, the convoy would be drifting helplessly. Rebel cells would have hours, maybe days, to raid or destroy it. And no one would know humanity had been here at all. Alara allowed herself the smallest smile. One needle in the giant's veins. Across the galaxy, whispers of a phantom human fleet were already spreading. Dominion governors dismissed them as propaganda. That suited her just fine. The bridge lights dimmed as they shifted into slip space, the stars bending away. Next targets 2 jumps out, Harrow said. Alara nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Every operation like this was a gamble. One wrong move, one witness, and the Dominion would turn its full fury toward Earth. But if they played their cards right, they could bleed the Empire without ever engaging in a pitched battle. Her personal terminal pinged. An incoming message. No Dominion encryption, no known source. She read it twice. If you are the ghost in the dark, we want in. The signature was alien, not human. Whoever they were, they'd recognize the hand behind the recent chaos. Alara leaned back in her chair, heart steady. The first domino had fallen. The real war hadn't even begun. Threads of rebellion. The message had led them here. A dead moon orbiting the red dwarf Vexor 3. No traffic, no settlements, just shadows and silence. Captain Alara Vance stood in the Resolute shuttle bay as the alien vessel approached. Its hull was battered, pitted with scorch marks, and painted with crude sigils. The ship was Kareth-made, warrior race, fierce in battle, now broken under Dominion rule. The airlock hissed open, revealing a towering Kareth warrior in faded armor. His fur was streaked with gray, but his stance was proud. "I am Rak Thune," he said in a graveled voice. "You cut the Dominion convoy over Tavros Prime. That was you." Alara didn't answer directly. "If I said yes, what would you want from me?" His tusked grin was all teeth. "To learn how." Hours later, they sat in the Resolute strategy room, a holographic star map between them. Alara explained the principles: hit and fade, misdirection, and making the enemy fight shadows instead of soldiers. She showed how small forces could cripple larger ones by targeting infrastructure instead of armies. "You fight like predators," Rax said, admiration in his tone. "Not prey." That was the highest compliment a Kareth could give. By the time their talks ended, Rack had pledged his war band to her cause. It was a small force, barely a dozen ships, but every one of them crewed by fighters who had nothing left to lose. Underscore 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 underscore. Over the next month, Ilara worked through encrypted channels, contacting other scattered resistance cells. A Girox smuggler group, a trio of Valari pilots known for running blockades, a handful of Dominion defectors who'd had enough of Imperial cruelty. They didn't meet in person, not yet, but she wove them together with shared intelligence, common targets, and the promise of mutual protection. Each thought they were just part of a loose alliance. Only Ilara saw the full picture. The first test came at the three-world gambit. 3 occupied systems, Nerith, Voltan, and Corin, would rise in new perfect unison, not with massive fleets or armies, but with sudden, surgical strikes on Dominion garrisons, communications hubs, and fuel depots. The goal wasn't to win territory, it was to force the Dominion to divide its response. When the time came, chaos erupted across all 3 systems. Dominion fleet commanders scrambled to redeploy, chasing phantom threats while real attacks gutted their infrastructure. By the time they realized the scale of the deception, the rebels were already gone. In the aftermath, Dominion media tried to downplay the events, but word spread through underground channels faster than censorship could smother it. The rebellion had grown teeth. In the quiet after the operation, Ilara stood alone on the Resolute's bridge, watching the stars drift. Every step forward meant greater risk. Harrow approached, holding a datapad. Intercepted Dominion orders. Captain, they've marked you as a primary target. Her eyes narrowed. How primary? They are preparing a fleet, Harrow said grimly. Heading for Sol. The war had just come home. The Empire strikes back. The Dominion didn't send raiding parties or scouts. They sent an armada. From the Sol sector defense grid, Captain Ilara Vance studied the incoming formation. 3 carrier groups, a dozen battleships, and more escorts than her entire fleet had ships. Their objective was clear: crush humanity before the rebellion could spread further. The War Council aboard the Resolute was tense. Representatives from the Kareth, Duroc, and Valari appeared via Hololink, each with their own demands. Most wanted to scatter their forces, but Ilara knew that was suicide. If we meet them in open battle, we lose, she said. So we won't. We'll let them come to us, into a maze they'll never leave. She called it Operation Glass Maze, a layered defense turning Sol's asteroid belts, moons, and gas giant orbits into killing grounds. Mine layers seeded the paths between planets. Decoy satellites broadcast false distress calls, luring enemy squadrons into traps. Even derelict freighters were rigged with remote detonation warheads. The Armada arrived in a wall of burnished steel. Dominion commanders expected a quick, glorious victory. Instead, they found empty space and static-filled comms. The first trap sprung in the Orc cloud. A retreating Kareth frigate lured 3 Dominion cruisers into a dense ice field. Mines detonated in silent bursts of light, shattering hulls before the enemy realized they were boxed in. At Saturn's orbit, a Valari fighter wing feigned a desperate defense, drawing carriers into range of hidden mass drivers mounted on Titan's surface. Slugs the size of small houses tore through their launch bays, turning fighters into wreckage before they could even deploy. Every advance bled them. Every chase ended in another ambush. On the 4th day, a Dominion battleship group pursued the Resolute itself into the asteroid belt. Harrow piloted through twisting canyons of rock while Ilara triggered pre-placed demolition charges. Entire chunks of asteroid drifted into their path, smashing through armor and forcing the enemy to break formation. That's when the boarding shuttle struck. Kareth warriors swarmed onto the Dominion flagship, cutting down defenders in brutal close-quarters combat. Minutes later, Ilara received the signal. Admiral Xeroc, the Dominion's lead strategist for the campaign, was in custody. News of the capture rippled across the galaxy. Dominion broadcast tried to spin it as a temporary setback, but the truth couldn't be contained. Rebellions that had been whisper quiet erupted into open defiance. In the command deck, Rakthune loomed over the prisoner. "One of their greatest hunters," he said, "now in our cage." Elara wasn't celebrating. She was staring at a tactical report flashing in red. Harrow read over her shoulder. "Central Dominion shipyard," he said. "Fortifications are thin. Looks like they pulled ships for this attack on us." Elara felt the pieces shift in her mind. The chance was rare, maybe once in a century. If they took that yard, the Dominion's war machine would stumble. She looked to her crew. "Set course. The rebellion's about to go for the heart." The galaxy awakens. The Central Dominion shipyard orbited the gas giant Varick Prime, an immense lattice of steel and light. For centuries, it had forged the Empire's warships, supplying every front. Now, for the first time, its defenses were thin, ships stripped away to crush humanity, and lost in the glass maze. On the Resolute's bridge, Captain Elara Vance stood before a three-dimensional tactical projection. Allied fleet icons blinked across the map. Kareth warbands, Jurok smugglers and retrofitted freighters, Valari fighter squadrons, and a scattering of ships from half a dozen newly rebellious worlds. "This isn't just our strike," she told them over the open channel. "This is the galaxy's. We hit together, we win together." The plan was simple in theory, brutal in execution. Rebel fleets would stage simultaneous diversionary assaults on Dominion outposts across the sector. The main strike, led by Elara, would hit the shipyard once its defenders were lured away. The operation began with controlled chaos. Dozens of rebel transmissions flooded Dominion channels, fake battle reports, phantom fleet sightings, and urgent pleas for reinforcements. The shipyard commander, convinced of a sector-wide offensive, deployed half his defensive fleet to chase ghosts. That was when the Resolute and its strike force emerged from slip space. Dominion defenders scrambled to respond, but the rebels pressed hard, forcing them into the upper orbits where Jurok freighters accidentally drifted into firing lanes, only to open concealed missile bays. Valari fighters darted between docking arms, disabling turrets with precision strikes. The shipyard's planetary shields flared under the pounding of mass drivers. Elara knew they had minutes before reinforcements returned. "Bring the array online," she ordered. From behind the shadow of Varick's outer moon, a hidden mass driver platform, smuggled into position weeks earlier, unfolded like a mechanical flower. It fired once, twice, 3 times, each slug slamming into the shield generators with bone-jarring force. The barrier flickered, then died. Kareth boarding teams, go. Rakthune's warband descended in dropships, cutting through airlocks and bulkheads. Fighting erupted across the yard's central command spire. Dominion officers, long untouchable, now found themselves surrounded by rebels shouting in a dozen alien tongues. Within the hour, the yard control center was secured. The final Dominion defenders surrendered when Admiral Jurok, still a prisoner, was paraded before them. On the Resolute's bridge, Harrow looked up from his console. "Confirmed, Captain." The shipyard's hours. Across the galaxy, rebel networks lit up with the news. Without the yard, the Dominion's ability to build and repair fleets would collapse within months. Already, uprisings in distant systems were growing bolder, knowing the Empire was bleeding. Later, standing before the gathered fleet, Elara addressed them not as a human captain, but as the strategist of a united rebellion. "This war isn't over," she said. "But today, the galaxy proved it doesn't belong to the Dominion. It belongs to those willing to fight for it." Rak stepped forward, raising his weapon in salute. And it began with the humans. The words echoed across comm channels, translated into countless languages. From asteroid colonies to ocean worlds, beings who had never met a human spoke them aloud. It was no longer just a rebellion. It was a revolution.